Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SpotOn Spotlight, where we have candid conversations with leaders in business. My name is Ian Murray. I'm the president of SpotOn Productions, and I'm very excited about today's guest, somebody who I've known for a long time in the community and is really, to use an older term, kind of a mover and shaker. He's a very good connector of people. So on that note, I want to introduce you to my friend, Todd Wilkowski. Todd, thank you for joining me today.
Great to be with you this morning, my friend.
So Todd, tell me a little bit about Frost Brown Todd and your role there, kind of being a fractional attorney and what that looks like in this new world.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll start with really, well, that's super important. I've done that for 11 years, but for a lot longer, I've been married to a wonderful lady named Heather, who I met in law school, about to celebrate 29 years of marriage, which is very exciting. Thank you. And we have raised or are raising 4 children here in Cincinnati, Ohio, which has been a super, super blessing. So those are the things that really, well beyond what I do, are the most important things in my life besides my faith. But I'm a partner at Frost Brown Todd, based out of Westchester, which is just north of Cincinnati. I came to Frost Brown Todd in 2014 from a general counsel position with a large construction company that's here in the Cincinnati area, and was really called to bring something different to the marketplace that was based upon my experience and the things that I really love to do and I felt that I was good at. And so I started the fractional general counsel practice here at Frost Brown Todd that I now head. And that's what I do 100%, is service that to middle market companies that are in growth mode, that are culturally or financially not ready for a general counsel, but want a trusted advisor in their camp as they continue their growth pattern.
So that's a great introduction, and the topic today is really about connections and how that changes business. I've heard you say that there's a big difference between social media and social networking, which is connection versus consumption. Help me unpack that idea and what that looks like and why it matters in today's business environment.
Well, I think in particular, we still are dealing with the ravages of COVID, where there was an encouragement. And I think upon reflection, we would say using the word social distancing was not the right word.
Yeah.
Maybe physical distancing to be able to protect people, but social, we should never be socially distanced from each other. Like, we're made to be in community. And so you had that on top of the idea of social media, which there was a lot of feeding on that because people were isolated. And social media will show you the best life of someone, but it also really brought out a lot of negative things in people who, with their screens off, were able to join into chains and make untoward comments. Or the reality is, because people were isolated, ideas became the way you defined a person. And you heard about people that after 30 years of a relationship, because they chose one political party over the other, or they had one particular idea, they just canceled them.
Yeah.
And think about that. 35 years, I heard family members. And so social media certainly has value, but social media is super transactional. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think social networking it denotes more of relationship. But networking itself can also be very transactional, unless the purpose of it is not what I'm doing about it for me and what I'm going to get out of it, but social networking to connect other people that really need to know each other, or with opportunities that they're not aware of, and always kind of with them first in mind. That social networking is what we need more of.
I love the idea of putting people first. It's so important, and you are one of the greats in Cincinnati at doing that. You've worn a lot of hats. Just getting to know you kind of over time. You're a lawyer, general counsel, but you're also an advisor, a connector, and a mentor. How has wearing those different hats shaped your perspective on what it really means to serve as a trusted business partner? And like you said, not just transactional, because I know there's this kind of idea that attorneys especially can be very transactional around billable hours. And it's like, if I've got to pick up the phone and talk to this guy, it's going to cost me money. But I think you're really shifting that perspective on how Frost Brown Todd shows up in the marketplace and how you represent yourself and that role. Tell me kind of more about how you've expanded beyond that into those many hats that you wear and how that makes you a trusted business partner.
Well, I definitely want to give a shout out to Frost Brown Todd. And as we talked about in our discussions when we prepared for this, Ian, you really have to have a law firm that is able to identify people and what their strengths are and allow them to operate in those strengths as well as celebrate them, and reward them for that. And, that's for any organization. But in a law firm, it can be really challenging because for the most part, especially a larger firm, the way that you get compensated and the way you get recognized is how many hours you bill times your billable rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of pressure on everything that you do to be able to justify what you did that day, that you've got to bill it. Problem is that creates a ton of adversity, or like a wall with either a prospective or a current client. You hear it all the time. Well, I appreciate the small talk. If people even want small talk, because most lawyers jump right into business.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're trying to have a conversation just to say, hey, how's business been? How's your family been? Which I think is the right way to start any conversation.
Yeah.
They're already thinking, well, the meter's running. So, hey, yeah, we're good, but they're hesitant to have that kind of conversation. So fortunately, Frost has set up a system and a non-billable code where we can track our time when we're either meeting with a prospective client or a center of influence, or even just having that conversation for 15 minutes, just checking in with a client. How's the wedding? How's your mom doing? I heard she fell. And the client knows, because you tell them, or after a relationship with you, that you're not going to be billing them for it. Because that's, again, because of the way the system's set up, we are looked at more as a hired gun that frankly you call after the crap has hit the fan, versus you're in a relationship where they are an advisor. Like, you can't be an advisor without a relationship, because you can't have trust without a relationship. And so my whole focus has been, and sometimes I'll even kind of push back on the attorney or the lawyer moniker. And it's not because attorneys and lawyers aren't great people, but people already have a perception of what that is. And typically it's a transactional hired gun, not what maybe 50 years ago it looked like. And that was the person I called for great advice to resolve problems, to just bounce ideas off of and get a sanity check. And that's what I'm trying to restore with this fractional general counsel practice.
That's awesome, Todd. So, you often coach younger associates, and I want to get into this mentorship piece too, because I think that's really important. How do you focus on relationship development with young people instead of just business development? What's the difference when you're meeting with people? Because I know I've talked to some people that you've helped mentor over time, and they always speak very highly of the time you invest in them. And I think it's important we talk about when we build connections, and it's not just business, really investing in other people. And you kind of said this earlier, it's like people first before business, because otherwise it just becomes transactional.
Well, it's kind of making the differentiation between social networking and social media, and the idea of between cross-selling or cross-connecting. And so that kind of comes into play with this as well, because if you start with business development, well, what are you doing? You're just developing business. You're starting with the end in mind, versus relationship development is you're developing a relationship. Yeah. And you're finding if there's any kind of fit between, because you might not be the right fit for each other, or that individual may already have a long-standing relationship they're super comfortable with their counsel, outside counsel. But once they've gotten to know you, they may have somebody else that they go, you know what, you really need to connect with this person, because I'm in a Vistage group with them, or they're a really good friend. I know what their pain points are, and what you are offering is going to be the answer. At least they need to meet with you to find out if that might be an answer to the challenges that they're happening or that they're having. But like you had mentioned younger associates, younger partners, in a law firm, the key thing when you start is you've got to be a professional at your craft. And you really, that's what we call the practice of law. Mm-hmm. You're practicing, getting reps, you're getting a better understanding of how the law applies to particular situations. You're learning that there's a client on the other end of this. So it's just not a theoretical law exam exercise where the law answer might not be the exact practical answer that they need to move forward. It's just something else that they're considering. And so when I talk to them, they're like, well, Todd, how do we develop business? because we don't have the relationships that like myself or other partners who have developed these over 20 or 25 years have. And I'm like, be a good connector.
Yeah.
I'm like, did you go to school in Cincinnati? I'm not from Cincinnati. I'm a transplant, but many people have come back and they've got school networks or they've gone to University of Cincinnati, Xavier, NKU, a lot of the fine universities that are here, and they've got people that are starting businesses, or they have people that are looking for jobs, or they're in jobs that they're not super happy with, and you might happen to know someone that you're like, let's get you into their network so you're on their radar screen, because at a certain point, if you're going to get another job and you're looking, as I tell my kids, it's not going to be in the papers, which I don't think they use the papers anymore, online. Like the really great jobs are going to be by people that are making connections with you and prospective employers, because they know you and they know the culture of the. So I'm like, be a good connector at this stage, right? Learn your craft, but be a great connector. And one of those things that for me was very important when I moved to Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a great town. We've lived here for almost, 28 years. But Cincinnati's a hard city to break into, like a lot of Midwestern cities. It's very parochial. The first question you get, or I got, was, where'd you go to school? And
Yeah.
I used to get that question when I lived in DC, but it was like, where did you go to college? Because there's a lot more transients there. No, where they were asking me is, where did you go to high school? And so it
It's
was kind
very
of comical.
Cincinnati.
Very Cincinnati, and you'll appreciate this because you live in Cincinnati. I said, high school, okay. Well, I went to Oakton High School in Vienna, Virginia, and they're like, Oak Hills, which is a high school in
Yeah.
Cincinnati for people outside this region. And I'm like, no. But then it was confusing, and even when I joined my first firm here in the city, Keating Youth and Cleat Camp, another really really great firm in the city. Um, as I was interviewing with them, they're looking at my resume and they're like, why Cincinnati? Like, there's nothing on my resume that shows any kind of connection with it. And but once you get to the city, and especially when you start having kids, it's a city that really embraces you. But you've got to somehow break in, because of all the connections here. And so what I did was, I had a heart for service already, but I'm like, I'm going to get on boards. I'm going to get on boards of advisors. You're not getting paid for it, of different organizations that I have a passion for, for young children, especially those who are fatherless, for people who have gone through drug or alcohol rehabilitation or trying to get their lives back together.
Yeah.
People who have been in prison for nonviolent offenders, that are trying to are trying to transition back into society successfully and build new community. Or many of them are faith-based organizations that are out there doing good, like Salvation Army, which I've been on the board of for a while. And through those organizations, not only was I able to help different people, but I was able to meet really great people that had kind of the heart for service that I did, and begin to develop relations and connections with them. And because when I came here, I mean, the only thing I knew about Cincinnati was the Reds at that point were good at one point. And just candidly, as a 13-year-old boy, I had a poster of Lonnie Anderson, in my room. Now I realized she wasn't real, but WKRP in Cincinnati. But other than that, I had no connections with the city whatsoever. So that's how I started making connections. And then you see the capital value of that, being able to make introductions in the city. Now, DC, 7 degrees of separation. This city, maybe 2 or 3, but people are so willing to give a warm referral or a warm introduction, and that always is going to put you up on the radar screen of different people who I have found in this city are just so good about wanting to keep people in this city, and are really, really good about meeting with them to encourage them.
And you and I are both in sales. I think there's that, especially for young salespeople I've seen, it's kind of the Northwestern Mutual model. Like, you got to set so many appointments up every day, and it comes across like as a very hard sale. Where I think I've learned over my career that pay it forward mentality really does have really good dividends long term. Yes, I need to sell for my company and drive new business, but I met with a prospect the other day. I'd known her at an old company. She's in a new role, and she's like, I'm gonna be honest, we're about a year out before we even are ready to talk about video, but I do need a website like right now. She's in marketing. I was like, hey, I've got a great website resource for you. She's like, oh my gosh, I would really appreciate that. The ones I've looked at are way more expensive than my budget. I was like, these guys would be great. So you start building relationships with people like the website people that, we often refer back and forth with. So there's that relational investment with them. Like, hey, I'm going to help you out. There's really nothing in it for me, but it helps you out. It helps this potential prospect out. And hopefully a year from now, she's got a great website that she is very happy with. And when she's ready to do something with my business, then she'll remember that kind of social capital too that you helped her out. So I think that boards are a great way to build relationships like you had talked about. It really is about that paying it forward and helping people out. So building off that, what does
you just say too? There's a lot of great things to pack from that. Number one, like even the approach that I take. In terms of the relationship development, some people have said, well, that really smacks of sales and we're lawyers. And I'm like, well, honestly, we're all in sales. Like we're bringing business and clients in, or we're performing, because if you don't perform the services well, that's part of your sales process as well. Like, because what am I selling? I'm selling great advice, responsiveness, etc. So that's a key thing, right? We're all in sales, but it's how are you doing sales?
Yeah.
And like what you even described is more of a cold calling, just kind of throw the net wide. And when you're young, that's kind of the approach you've got to do, right? Because you're kind of trying to make contacts with different folks. But as you get older, more and more, it's pure relational. It's not about just closing. It's playing the long game. And like you said, it's providing value to them, even when they might not ever use you for video production or use me for legal services. But what I've done is, I've come, like I said, I try to shed the moniker of lawyer and attorney. That's not what I lead with. What I've really started to be more than an outside general counsel is, I'm a connector, I'm a consigliere. I could put a horse head in your bed. That's too pragmatic. But like, I'm a first call. I'm a concierge, and it may be of the legal services in my firm or advice, or it may be, well, yeah, you need a video production because you need to get out and really increase your marketing and your presence online. I've got somebody for you, because you can say, well, here's a problem. I can't do anything for you, but what I can do for you is I can connect you. And so that's really, really powerful, because there's incredible value. And then you're viewed for that, to say, like, I've got people, Ian, right now, I've almost built a good part of my practice on this. Well, they'll call me and go, Todd, I don't really understand what you do in the legal profession, but what I do know is when I call you, you connect me to the right person.
Yes.
Right? It saves me a lot of time and headache. And typically who you make meaningful connections, so I don't have to scratch my head and go, wow, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. That didn't provide any value. And so now it's kind of like, instead of Better Call Saul, it's called Better Call Todd.
Better Call Todd.
Yeah, he's going to solve your problems. It might not be him, but he's going to get you the right person. So there's incredible value in that. And I think people forget that. Be a first call.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, too, that you do such a good job of, besides being helpful, you're just a really fun, like, I enjoy every conversation we ever have, Todd. Like, you're just a fun, genuine person to be around. And I think putting that genuineness out there, too, is also really important, because it's that old thing. People remember how you make them feel. So that's an important part of being a good connector too. So we kind of talked about that giving to get practice and how that's shaped your career and client relationships. What principles kind of help you guide how you decide who to connect, and how do you do it in a meaningful way so that you're helping extend that network? Like you've built a network out. I guess I'm trying to ask, how do you go from that small group and cast a wider net to your impact?
Well, I will tell you this. I am not a planner by nature. That's my wife, right? I mean, like, you think about your wife and like yin and yang and how we complement each other, which is God's great mystery, but he definitely does that.
Yes, he
I
does.
am definitely a spontaneous person. And really, there are clients or there are companies I can look at and go, this fractional outside general counsel model would be great for them. They're in growth mode. They don't, the last thing they want to do is manage all of these different legal providers. They're getting different in advice. They don't have relationships with any of them, or they've outgrown them, like their second generation leadership. They're still using the first generation resources, the accountants or the lawyers, and they just, they don't have the resources or the bench to be able to respond to them. So I will look at that. But if one of my friends asks me to go have coffee with someone because they need some help, or they need connectivity, again, because Frost Brown Todd is so good about allowing me to document that as time, right? Because I've got to account for what I do, just like every other attorney does. That I'm free to be able to go and meet with them and hopefully encourage them. And so I've done a lot of that through my career. One of the first things I was called to, and it was really hard to get my brain into this, but it was like I felt called, to meet with particularly men that were in transition, like they had just lost their job. And Ian, especially for men, because we define ourselves so much by what we do, right?
Yeah.
That's our identity. When that happens, it is devastating. And those men oftentimes are at risk, and they're kind of wondering, well, plus practically all their network is in their business. Like they never thought about networking outside. And so now they're trying to redefine, who am I? I feel like I've just been rejected. I don't know anybody because I haven't focused on that. And so I met with a lot of individuals that were in that position, and people would send them my way. And then we developed a network of different professionals that were committed. We called it the Capitalist Samaritan Group, started by my good friend Pat Burke at Burke CPA. And so we would meet, and we would send different people, maybe they're in banking, or they're in law, or they're in accounting, or they're a business owner. And we were able to provide hope to these guys. But like in my mind, I'm so programmed with the billable hour. I'm like, I started out going, well, how am I going to make time for this and still get my hours in? Well, you do the right thing, it always works out. And so I always had plenty of time. And so some of these individuals, I didn't do it because of this, but they were executives where they were. They landed, and they either became, or they decided to become business owners because they wanted autonomy, and they didn't want to fear, well, when's the next shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
And some of them, I became their legal advisor. It's not why I did it, but right, it was just because in a dark moment, I was there for them with nothing really to offer me out of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Or they've just become referral sources, or frankly, just great friends who have also become fractional executives. So that's an idea of, in the moment, like if you look at it from just a worldly thing, it was really doing nothing for me. And if anything, could have maybe caused me some issues at the wrong firm with, Wilkowski, what are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't bill for that. But those playing the long game, building relationships, always in the long run is going to pay off in spades.
Do you feel like you ever have to protect your time? Like, do you ever feel like you're getting just too many requests where you might see your time getting, I don't know that abused is the right word, but too many people are like, oh, I need advice. Like, I'm going to do a 30-minute coffee, and then you do 10 of those in a day, and you've lost over half your day.
It definitely happens. I mean, I've battled the kind of people pleaser, thing throughout my life. I think I've made a lot of progress on that, thank God. But sometimes it's really not just what they can do for me, it's what I can actually do for them. And so I'm learning to prioritize that a lot better, because I want to have margin, and I want to be able to be available if I'm called to have another meeting or connect with someone. Because a lot of what I do is meet with people, whether it's clients or prospective clients or trusted advisors or just people that need help, largely in networking and getting connected to whatever their next opportunity is. So that's a great question. Still working on it, still a work in progress. But what I have found is, the first priority is going to be my wife and my kids are not going to suffer. Because if I put that first, everything else falls in line. And you can see the carnage of marriages and families with, unfortunately, it's very, especially for guys, it's very easy to get in and, I'm a great provider and I'm going to do this and ultimately my family is going to benefit, but your family needs you more. And if you're doing the right thing and your priorities are straight, it's like God's economy, man. I don't know how to describe it, but the time comes in well, gosh, I've got all these meetings, but I know that I should meet with this individual because I can provide value, or the meeting goes longer than you expect. and then you get back and you go, oh, hey, can we postpone that meeting to next week? And you're like, oh, I just got myself some time back. But it happens all the time, right? But you just got to do the right thing.
Yeah. So for somebody who's maybe been stuck in that mentality of, sell, or it's always business all the time, how would you recommend, or what's a practical step somebody could take to start shifting that mindset from transactional to being more relational?
Well, I had this conversation actually with someone over the weekend, and they are under a lot of pressure by the end of every month that they've got to have not only that they've made contacts, but they're closing deals. And I said, so the first thing you've got to really appreciate, because some people are wired that way, transactional, very competitive, like that gets them going. But for highly relational people like you and me, we're not. And so you've got to figure out, is that actually the right company for you? Like, are they going to be able to see that you are a relational being and that you can develop long-standing relationships and connections? And they're going to let you have the time to do that versus, forcing you into something that you're not, because people are going to know that, right? And by the way, people are expecting you when they, especially, attorneys, when you come to a meeting with them, okay, what are they going to sell me? How are they going to try to convince me that whoever I'm with, that they're better than that, or tell me how smart they are, all their experience, and they can solve my problems before they even know what my problems are, or before they even know who I am.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the first thing is, are you in the right culture for what you're wired to do? So, because if you're not, it's never going to matter. Mm-hmm. And then convince them that the approach that you are taking is the right one. Right. Because if you act against what your nature is, people are going to sense that. And what at the end of the day, in many cases, Ian, what are we selling? I mean, are we selling SpotOn Productions? Yeah. Frost Brown Todd, sure. But people want to do business with people they like and they trust. And you can't do that in one meeting. It's going to be over time and showing value to them. But the cool thing is those kind of relationships are ones that last and endure and have political capital to them. The ones that are done very transactionally, let's be honest, at the end of the day, it's normally done about price. And so there's always going to be somebody cheaper eventually. So those relationships, while you may be able to land them, typically they're not going to be at the margin that most people are going to want. And at the end of the day, you're going to be bidden out against somebody else within 6 months or a year. I'd rather have the former. Plus, I think the relationship's much more satisfying.
Well, like you said, that it's really built on that trust. It's the people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. And you want them to get to that point because they trust you so much they don't even think to go anywhere else. It's like, when it comes time for whatever it is that when I need something from Todd Wilkowski from the legal department, I'm going to go with him because I trust him. I know he's going to do a great job and take care of me.
I like to say, relationships are the great decommoditizing factor. Relationships, great decommoditizing factor. If you don't have a relationship, whatever you're doing, eventually you're going to be a commodity and you're going to be a low-cost seller or provider.
You should trademark that. I like that phrase.
Maybe I will. I've got good trademarking.
You know somebody.
I know someone. Yeah, exactly.
So you and I tend to both be in sales. Do you think these principles work for people who might be ahead of HR or somebody else maybe in the C-suite of a business where they're not necessarily directly responsible for biz dev and bringing business in, but does it apply to other people outside of kind of a traditional sales role?
Absolutely, right? I mean, like if you would have entitled this, Todd Wilkowski, the lawyer on sales, I'm guessing very few people would have tuned in because they'd be like, well, what can an attorney teach me about relationship development or sales, right? For the most part. But it's all about, at the end of the day, like let's use the HR example. HR individuals can often be compliance-based or they can be talent culture-based. And the latter is going to be all about relationships and pouring into people, where the other is really just about following the rules. And sometimes human beings get lost in the midst of that with compliance and not really a lot of EQ. So really calling them back to human, right? Human resources. And the reality is they're the toughest things about our job sometimes because, there's not an equation for how you deal with people and the wounds and the troubles that they're bringing in every day that are unseen to us. But if you can focus on that relationship and seeing them as a valuable part, and if they struggle, not as because they're intentionally trying to fail, but because they might need some help, or you might need to identify, hey, this just, as much as we put into you, this is not the right place, but there is a right place for you. We can do that for you. The other thing, like with a CEO, CEOs are typically visionaries. They're the ones that, if they're really, really good, they can tell stories. But if they're going to tell stories that last and impact people, it's got to be something about their life and the impact it had, right? They've got to be transparent with people. You got to be wise about your transparency, but you've got to be able to connect with your people to be able to move them towards an idea. Because otherwise, and I've been in this situation before with some leaders, well, it just becomes the soup du jour. Well, I read this great book. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to move forward. And as my old boss used to say, and the people nod their head and they give you the silent finger, right? Because they know that eventually it's going to end. Versus, you know what? This is something that really changed my life and my perspective. And I know that this fits with our culture and our people, and we're going to get better out of this. And we're just going to be a better company to serve our clients. That's compelling. But that is based upon using a relationship versus a transactional or a command and control. Hey, you just better get around it, man. This is where the bus is going. If you're not going, you're off of it, right? You hear that a lot in some businesses, and then they wonder why they've got tons of attrition. But
That's really
so I think
good.
it applies.
That's good advice. So Todd, what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received, or your favorite piece of business advice to give?
Wow. Well, what I'll do is this, if it's okay.
Yeah.
When I started at Baker Concrete, which is where I was the general counsel, I wanted to read. Dan Baker's an exceptional entrepreneur, renowned not only in our area but in the construction industry. Dan never finished college. In fact, he joined his grandfather pouring driveways at Miami University. And was an entrepreneur, and very, very, very smart and very well read. And so Dan was a voracious reader. So when I started, and I figured I was going to be an advisor to him and the leadership team, I wanted to find out not only what he was reading, but what had the most impact on it. And so he gave me 5 books, and they still are some of the best books, and I utilize them all the time. And the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell, The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Peter Lencioni, Blue Ocean Strategy, which was done by a number of Harvard professors. And it was really, it was all about how do you differentiate yourself and decommoditize yourself and get out of the red ocean, which is all based on price, versus the blue ocean. And then the last one was The Servant Leader by James Hunter. Because at the end of the day, if you're not willing to serve and really turn the triangle upside down, about supporting your people and their legacy, which is why I love mentoring and making them better, right? So eventually you're working yourselves out of a job, right? You don't identify your job as the ultimate end, but it's like, how do I bring the next people up? Because at the end of the day, if you do that, then there's going to be another position for you. You're not holding on so tightly. So I read all those books. And for me, those still are the books I would recommend to anyone to better understand business. Because business at the end of the day is, it's pro formas and it's numbers, but it's really about leadership and getting people to row the boat together for synergistic effect and exceptional results as a team.
What was the second book you mentioned? I've heard of all of them except for the second one. You had the 21.
I think it was the fifth discipline by Peter Senge, who's been on the MIT Sloan business. Just a brilliant person. I will tell you, it's a hard book to read, man. I had to take it a jump, but incredible wisdom in there about organizational behavior. And again, the idea of synergy and team instead of just creating silos that really don't work together, internally compete, and ultimately, either it ends in the demise of the company, or if they get things together, they can achieve results that they couldn't alone. I will say too, there was one other book, so there was actually 6, and that was Good to Great by Jim Collins.
That's a great
I'm sure
one.
you've read that. And Jim Collins is just he's brilliant, and he talks about the idea of figure out what you're really, really good at, and you may expand off of that, but don't get the hubris of because I'm really good at this, I can go do all these other things. Because what he found with these company studies was, well, I'm good at this, so I'm going to go do that. Well, it's a new offering, it's a new product. I got to do new hires. All my money is going to that, and the money from the golden goose that supported the venture in the first place starves, and companies collapse. But it's largely because of pride and hubris by the CEO. So those would be the six, and you read those, and there's a lot of other great business books I've read, but to me that helped to shape my whole philosophy on how business is done well.
That's awesome. Anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to make sure we covered when we talked about the power of building connections and people?
Well, one thing that I'm super excited about, and Ford Knowlton is a good friend of yours and mine, and I'm really excited about the fractional movement and in the new gig economy. And when I say fractional, fractional means typically someone who's got experience with higher level or growing companies that has decided instead of working for one company, they're going to work for several. They are very strategically minded. A fractional be effective has to have access to the C-suite, the leadership team, the business owner. They're not project based. Their engagement is very relational, and it is for an indefinite duration. But that said, you're always working yourself out of a job as the company scales and eventually needs a full-time executive. The problem with the movement right now and where the opportunity is we serve a lot in silos. And so what Ford is doing, and I know you've been very active in that community, is bringing different fractional executives together, building trust among them, and then finding ways that they can serve as basically a de facto fractional C-suite with CFOs, CEO, GCs. And so that way you've got different people that really trust each other, that are really focused on the client, not on them being right over everybody else. And it's kind of like, if you know the concept of rocket fuel from traction, taking it to a much higher level. So synergy among your internal team, synergy among your outside advisors, game on. And so that's what I get really, really excited about and I think that's the next level for the fractional movement and how we can best serve clients and help these businesses grow, create more jobs, more opportunities, and really fuel the return of our economy, which we definitely need to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think that's a great kind of bow on the end of the talk of connections, because it really is. It's a great group of people connecting with each other to say, our accountant is out of that fractional group. He provides fractional CFO and accounting services, so we don't have to have that on our team. And he can bring in, or you can partner with other people, say, okay, I don't need this, but I might need marketing. So it lets you build the team by building those connections and relationships with a bunch of really good, solid people that, again, like, and trust. So you can kind of exponentially impact the business when you start working with them. Agreed. So Todd, where can people find you online, and how can they connect with you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn under Todd Wilkowski. We have a FBTlaw.com website where I've got my profile and some material that I've written on connection and our fractional general counsel approach. Plus, you can learn more about our firm, which is outstanding. Or my email is twilkowski@fbtlaw.com. And heck, give me a call on my cell phone, 513-258-9540. I love connecting. I love connecting others and encouraging others to become the best version of themselves. And would be happy to be part of this movement along with you to just continue to make our cities better through stronger connections and stronger social interactions.
I love that, Todd. Thank you for being so generous with your time and willing to, again, build connections and relationships with people. Appreciate your time today. I think we had an excellent conversation. I'm really excited about some of the stuff that we talked about. I definitely want to check out a couple of those books, especially that one I hadn't heard of. I'm interested to see kind of how that can help me grow a little bit more, because we're always learning every day.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
well,
Todd.
It's great to be the opportunity.
Yep. We'll talk in soon. Thank you, sir.
See ya.